We've got Paul Kimball here, and we've talked about everything but Exit Thread, at least at this point. And there was a story that talked about. Anyways, I got to mention UFOs before we're done, but that's me, not you.
Okay, sure.
So Exit Thread, and congratulations on the success. The film has been very, very well received. In fact, as we told people who listened to this program a couple of months ago, that Eastlink was going to give it a screening. This is coming up when?
Premieres this Saturday, February 25th at 10 p.m., and then it will re-air at 1 p.m. on Sunday, 1 a.m. on Sunday. And then it airs each consecutive Saturday, same time, same network, for the next 4 or 5 weeks, I think. And then eventually it'll wind up on demand on Eastlink. And Eastlink has affiliates across the country. So this time around, it'll be Atlantic Canada or the Maritimes that you'll be able to see it. But eventually it should wind its way to Ontario, Alberta, British Columbia, the places where Eastlink has affiliates.
What does this mean for independent film, in your opinion?
I hope it's a good thing, because Eastlink is a community channel. It should be programming, and it does, Nova Scotian content. It is a vast untapped reservoir for those of us who have made content, particularly feature films, to get our products screened in front of the people who frankly have paid for those films. So most of our films are funded by Nova Scotia taxpayers and Canadian taxpayers. We should do whatever we can to get them out there. Sure, this film could have gone to TMN, the movie network, or one of the other sort of broadcast networks in Canada. And I think we talked about this last time. If you go onto your on-demand on your television now and you haul up TMN, and this is not a slight on TMN, but you see like 450 films pop up. Yep. They don't prioritize Canadian films. I don't care what they say, unless it's a huge international hit. You know, they're a very rare one. So they take independent films because they have to, because it's part of their programming mandate. You're a small fish in a very, very big pond. My partner, Ron Foley McDonald, and I looked and said, we'd like as many people in Canada to see this. We feel like we owe something to Canadians. And this is also a great opportunity to maybe do more work with Eastlink on original programming. So, sure, you guys air our film. Now you're a big fish in, I don't even think it's a smaller pond. I think Eastlink actually probably has more viewers than TMN. So I think we'll reach a bigger audience too, which is what every filmmaker should want. I want people to see this film. But it goes beyond just Exit Thread. We have a series that was just funded by NSBI, which Eastlink has committed to, called Cinema 902, which we'll be filming in the summer and the fall. 4 new independent feature films as part of a sort of mini-series concept, an anthology series. Each season will have a different theme. This time it's dystopian, post-apocalyptic future kind of thing. Next time it could be love stories. I don't know. But the idea is to give younger filmmakers, to give people who are underrepresented in the system now, women in particular, and I could do a whole show on the research I've done into where the money's been going in Nova Scotia under the Liberals. Less than 1% of that money has gone to companies owned by minorities or owned by women. 85% of that money has gone to 8 companies or groups of companies all owned by the same individuals. And less than 7% have gone to independent feature films. Most are going to television or service productions. Those are some staggering numbers to me. So part of what we're trying to do with Cinema 902 will be to give women an opportunity, to give young filmmakers an opportunity, like my friend Dylan Garland or Chelsea Camo, but also to bring them in an ownership sense so that if the film does well, they'll own a piece of the back end. They'll be part of that picture. So it's not just make the film and move on. It'll be, we're going to try and sell this. We're trying to get it out there. And if it does well, you do well on the back end too. And I think that's part of it as well, to try and give back. The community's been very good to me. The film industry's been good for 20 years. I want to give something back to it as well.
Here on our radio this afternoon, we're chatting with Paul Kimball. Exit Thread is premiering this Saturday on Eastlink. It'll be, aired several times after that, and a chance for you to see it eventually on demand. I don't know if it's popped up in your social media feed or not, but there was a story about David Cronenberg in the 70s, and it was talking about the film credit process in the 70s, which essentially meant that production companies could produce in Canada, and that until they broke even, until they made a profit, there was pretty much a guarantee that they weren't going to lose money, that they would then, in fact, and that's why we saw like Meatballs and a bunch of the other films, Porky's, all these films coming to Canada, the productions coming to Canada. So when we hear the Nova Scotia government saying that what we did have in the past was way too generous, the Canadian government has, in fact, been far more generous at points in its history, and one could argue that that was a very important time for Canadian cinema.
The old system, it's a very long story. The tax shelter system, lawyers, doctors, dentists, and all those people would just sink money into film and television productions and use it as a tax write-off. It's how Salter Street Films began, frankly. And we would get shows like The Littlest Hobo, which as a kid I loved, but if you look at it now, well,
It doesn't have legs. Well, it has four legs and it pees on trees.
Pretty much. But, it's not the kind of quality television that I think a more professional industry makes now. Mm-hmm. When the tax credit system was brought in, it was designed to be more transparent. It was designed to go to companies as opposed to individuals. There was a whole to make it more professional and organized. And I think it succeeded beyond anybody's expectations at doing that across this country, which is why every jurisdiction had a tax credit. But there's no question that it served as a jumpstart to a very successful industry that I was reading an old copy of the Globe and Mail in your waiting room out there that is worth billions and billions of dollars to the Canadian economy across this country. So in Nova Scotia, it was estimated to be worth $100 to $200 million. So this is the jobs for people, putting people to work, creating infrastructure around it, spin-offs and everything. All of that goes back to the tax shelter that you're talking about that made Porky's. That's what kickstarted the industry. And then the tax credits that came in and sort of, I view the tax shelters as the James T. Kirk era of Star Trek, where you could pretty much do whatever you wanted. Mm-hmm. The tax credits are the Jean-Luc Picard era, more formalized, more structured. And so there's a difference. And we moved out of that James T. Kirk just fired the phasers at everything era, and we moved into what the tax credits represented, which was, a fairer system, but also one that was less open to misuse, if you see where I'm going there.
Absolutely. I was worried that I didn't see the new Star Wars and someone would ask for my nerd card back. You're helping me keep hold of it here this afternoon.
I am a card-carrying sci-fi Dungeons & Dragons nerd. Yes, I admit it.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm hearing mixed results, and perhaps maybe you can put this in perspective, or at least help me understand why some people within the film industry are saying what we have now, the system that it's morphed into, is working for them. Others are saying, yeah, but it's still not great, but I don't want to be seen as crapping on it. So I want to help you to help me understand perhaps where those perspectives are coming from. Paul Kimball's still in our studio. We'll be right back after this. Big, bright sunshine, lots of blue sky here for Tuesday. It's the day after the holiday. It's the day after the provincial holiday, something this government said they were going to do, and they did. So there's a promise kept. And we're talking, though, a little bit about the change that was made to the film tax credit. We have a system in place now that has, morphed from what it once was. And as I was telling you, my guest here in the studio, Paul Kimball, is an independent filmmaker, someone who's spent a great deal of time both behind the scenes and in front of the camera even, working towards trying to, make a career of film and television and the industry that is so important to him. And congratulations on Exit Thread. And for the most part, I can't quite make sense of, I'm hearing from some people that, months ago when this was a huge issue, the film tax credit issue, people said this government is going to ruin the industry in the province. And now people are saying, well, it's not in as bad a shape as we'd worried. So where are we at, and where is this actually better in your opinion, Paul?
It's better for some people. I'll be perfectly honest. It's working better for me. The new system has worked well for Ron and me. Cinema 902 is a good example. Haunted, this new ghost hunting show that I am going back in front of the camera on with Holly Stevens, those were funded. Would they have been funded under the old system? Yes. Did we get maybe a little more money under the new system? I think we probably did. So the new system is working at least as well as the old system for me, if not maybe a little better. The problem is the new system, my fundamental problem with it, it doesn't treat everybody equally. I mean, it does in a sense that if you're first come, first serve, and if there's still money left in the fund, then you'll get that money. But the tax credit system literally said, we believe that this industry is good for the province, that it makes more money than it gives out. It's a net profit to the province. And if you have an industry like that, then you don't put a cap on it. You say come one, come all. If you meet the criteria that we have set out for being eligible for this tax credit, then we'll give it to you. The new system says, nope, we're going to put a cap on it, even though the Liberals repeatedly say we believe the industry is good for the province. Well, then I don't know why you'd cap it. But so fine, there's a cap of $10 million. And once that's used up, we'll consider on a case-by-case basis whether or not we should add more money into the fund. So to me, that leads to a whole bunch of problems. And I'll give you a good example of what, good news story or bad news story. Most of my colleagues would tell you that The Mist is a good news story. Mm-hmm. I believe it's a good news story in a sense. I'm glad that many of my friends were able to work on The Mist, that they got meaningful employment on The Mist. Fantastic. They would have gotten meaningful employment on The Mist with the tax credit too. So I don't give any credit to the new system or to the Liberal government for any of that. But here's the problem with The Mist. The Liberals, now remember, the tax credit treats everybody equally. There's no special stream. It's just like you come in, you qualify, you get it. the new fund was supposed to work like that. But the Mist wanted almost $6 million. The government realized that if you took $6 million out of a $10 million fund, you'd have a significant problem, not a lot of money left.
Yeah.
So what they did, despite promising to be transparent, and we still don't know all the exact terms of how this came about or who called who, I don't know. I wish I knew who to make these calls to. They took $6 million and they said, well, this isn't going to come out of the fund. We're just going to take it out of this other area here, and we're just going to give it to the Mist. Now, that's great if you're the producers of the Mist. That's great if you're working on the Mist, and I understand why people are thankful to have jobs. But I can separate myself from the industry and say, as a matter of public policy, not only is that not what the Liberals said they were going to do, it's just bad public policy. It's the worst kind of economic development where you say, we have one fund for all these people over here, and maybe because this is a bigger project, or maybe because it's a big American company, maybe we'll find another way to get even more money to these people over here. So I'm capped. There's a per project cap, too, of $4 million. I'd love to have a project that was worth $10 million and getting $4 million. But let's say I did. You know, I'm capped. I can't go above $4 million. I can't get more than $4 million. But somehow this American company can come up and make a phone call or two, and suddenly, boom, they're getting almost $6 million. That's a problem. And first of all, that's not how the Liberals said the system was going to work, and then they went and did it anyway. But it's also, it's different than the tax credit because the tax credit would have treated every project different, or the same, sorry. So that project would have gotten the same rate as I would have. Now, I get a lot less money.
Because you didn't put as much in.
Right, and because the budget on my projects is significantly smaller.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Everybody operating from an equal and level playing field where we all know what's happening. Nobody gets to make a phone call and say, hey, can my tax credit be 60% instead of 40%? Or can I get an extra $100,000 here or $1 million there? But the new system they've set up apparently seems to work that way. And just as a matter of being a citizen of Nova Scotia, forget that I'm a filmmaker, I look at that and I say, that's terrible public policy. And that has to change, which is why I believe bringing the old system back is the best way to go. I know some of my colleagues are leery of doing that because they're afraid of disrupting the comeback that the industry has had. So 2015 was a lost year. Yep. 2016, the industry's done a little better, and there's no point in denying that. I wouldn't call it, as Gary Vermeer, one of the union heads who's running for the NDP nomination over in Dartmouth South, did. I wouldn't call it a banner year, which he did, and I sort of called him out on that. I'd call it a recovery year full of lost opportunities because the business is booming across this country. Yep. You can go to Sudbury, you can go to British Columbia, they're at Ontario, they're beyond capacity. Instead of the 100 or whatever it was, $130 million that the Liberals say, and I don't trust their statistics, but let's assume they're right, $130 million. It should have been double that. And so to me, it's not, this is a banner year. This is a recovery year full of lost opportunities. And I still know plenty of workers and actors and people that left this province who haven't come back too. And I don't think many of them are ever going to come back, because they've just been burned by what happened here in 2015.
I did hear some concerns that it was hard to find, that there was some concern over finding experienced crew for the Mist because the commitment had been made, and then obviously the changes had happened. We lost Haven. I mean, that series ran its course, so It's not entirely fair to say it's gone because of whatever changes. And even major productions like Book of Negroes, but we haven't had anything of that scale. Tom Selleck's not been back in town to film a new movie for how long, right? And again, that might be just the series or the season or that project running its course.
You know, the other thing, too, is we have to look at what kind of films we want to make here, what kind of films we want to fund. I'm a big supporter of service production. Production's coming here from away. They put people to work. They create crews that guys like me can use, too. But I also believe that we need to look at maybe incentivizing local production and saying, you know what, if you're from here, maybe you get a little more because it's harder for us to compete with people from away. So I'm not the Weinstein Company. I don't have billions of dollars in my bank account. Most filmmakers, independent filmmakers, guys like Mike Melsky or Jay Dahl, those guys don't have billions of dollars. So the same reason when I was in government, we put a regional bonus incentive in because it's easier to film in Halifax. Halifax has a whole bunch of built-in advantages, including a lower union rate. So we said, look, let's give the regions, anything outside of Halifax, an extra 5%, which eventually became 10%. You film in Yarmouth or Wolfville or Amherst, we're going to give you a little more money as an incentive to put you out there. Not as, you're not going to pocket that as profit. That's just going to cover the extra costs. So I think we can do that with the Nova Scotian industry too, by saying, look, if you're a Nova Scotian producer telling Nova Scotian stories, And I think we should be starting to looking at incentivizing women producers and minorities, all of this stuff. We should take the opportunity with the new government, I hope, to open the entire thing and say, what kind of film industry do we want here, and how best can we incentivize it and fund it so that it's booming but also fiscally responsible for all Nova Scotians.